last time I was scheduled to be here, I had apparently a vacation planned in the hospital for a while. But a couple weeks ago, we saw many of the brethren over at our congregation, and of course, you're welcome to come see us anytime. We start at 10 o'clock, and even if you just come to hear my part and then go on your way, that's perfectly good too. We go through the book of Genesis with the Hebrew, verse by verse, so word by word. So we're attentive to that. I'm just kidding. I want you to come and stay, and kick your shoes off, and settle down a bit. So again, I thank the brethren. Because while I was in that weakened condition, I was so touched because the most beautiful thing that I saw was John Carnegie, Mark Ellis, and many of the brethren coming to pay a visit with me. And I looked like a wreck. You know, no matter how bad I look today, it's like nothing. I win a prize for the last time we saw each other. So again, I thank the brethren who were able to keep us in prayer and who have been watching over us.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that we express our appreciation to that and for that. And it is wonderful to be in a position of sharing the word of the eternal. I was wondering if anybody has a marker for the board here. We weren't able to have one. If during the course of that, somebody might very cautiously slip one over to me, because I wanted to share initially something that I found very interesting. Actually, I had heard this thing. This is not from me. Thank you much, Lee. It is a really interesting thing. We go to Genesis, the first chapter, first verse, and we see science. We see incredible science right there. And I call out to my brethren, what's the first rule of thermodynamics? That matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Yes.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now we read in Genesis, it's Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, which means in the beginning, the Eternal created the heavens and the earth. And we see that the name Elohim is right in the center of that verse. Bereshit is in the beginning, that's time. Bara is created out of nothing, that's energy. The heavens, that's space. And haaretz, that's the earth. And right in the center of that verse is Elohim. Elohim created the matter and the energy, and he owns time and space. He doesn't function in time and space. He is beyond that. These are all creations of his. So that is an important verse to understand. And if you want to take some notes, or I understand we're recording this so you can reflect back and look at my references, because this is very interesting. And when we look back at Bereshit, the very first word, it ends with a tav, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which refers to the covenant. And this is an interesting thing, bear with me. If you take that tav and you count 49 letters, you come to the vav. And let me just write the Hebrew word down for Torah. Okay, that's Torah. That is the instruction, the law of the Most High. And 7 is a very important number for us. 7 sevens are even more important, as we see during Shavuot, the feast of Pentecost, that 7 perfect need to be expressed. And 7, of course, as many of us are aware of, is a continuous action. It's a process that is set in motion from eternity to eternity. And the continuous action that we are told to emulate is the love, the agape of the eternal, the agape, which is active love. He is active, and we are to be active in that same love. And so this was found out by somebody who apparently had a lot of time on their hands to do this. But if you count 49 letters from the tav, you get a vav. And if you count another 49 letters, you get a resh, and you get another 49 letters, and you get a hey. And okay, that's a big deal, so what? But if you go to the book of Exodus, Shemot, the first tav that appears, you add to it 49 letters, you get the vav, you get the resh, and you get the hey in the sequence of 49 letters. And again, 4, and I don't want to overwhelm you with gematria or put my faith and trust in numbers, but the word is miraculous in many different levels, and those who seek to find him will find him in the most minute details of existence. Mm-hmm. So throughout Genesis and Exodus, we see that in the very beginning of those books. Leviticus doesn't have that. But if you skip to Numbers, the 4th word is Moshe, which is Moses. And Moshe ends with a hey. And you see something unusual happen. Every 49 letters you have Torah backwards. You have the hey, the resh, the vav, and the tav. And you go to Deuteronomy. And the first time that the word Torah appears, ending with the hey, you have the same situation happening. The hey, the resh, the vav, and the tav. So you have 2 going forward, 2 coming backwards. And then we're faced with the middle book, which is Leviticus. And before I continue, the interesting thing is that languages, all languages, flow to Jerusalem, towards Jerusalem. It is the natural, supernatural, divine place where the Eternal has placed his name, and he draws all things, draws all men unto him. If you go to the east of Jerusalem, everyone writes right to left. If you go to the west of Jerusalem, everyone writes left to right. So it's a coming together. So what is at the center of it? If you look at Leviticus, the 7th letter, every 7th letter beginning with you start with the yud, okay, and you count 7, and you have a hey. You have 7, and you have the vav, and you have the 7, and you have the hey. You have the tetragrammaton, every 7th letter. So as opposed to the 7 sevens, Leviticus in the middle is the 7 letters, and we see that Torah starts and ends. It always points to the Eternal. So if I were to lay this out on the board, it would be Torah, Torah, the Eternal's name, and then Torah, Torah backwards. So it's all focusing upon the Creator, just as the first verse of Genesis. Elohim is the creator of the heavens and the earth in an actual time and its actual space. So very interesting. I hope you find that interesting. And beyond coincidence, you know, there comes to a point where you see things like this happen, and it's just a little bit more than just coincidences, okay? So I'm going to go on from there. Elohim is always at the center. He's at the core of life, the true life. And as a result, we're just thankful, and we can appreciate him. We're also at this time of the year, as I noticed some of the subjects that you've been carrying over the years, trying to combat the secular approach to different appointed times, you know. The Eternal has given us his Moedim, his appointed times, which is often translated as feasts. But more importantly, they are appointed times. They are appointed for us to be there. They're his times, but he's invited us to be part of that unique experience. He's a father calling his children to have a special time in which they can understand him better and experience him in a true living way. So we have a secular calendar as opposed to the sacred. And if we look at Exodus chapter 12, we see that the season is the beginning of your year. It's the month of the barley harvest, being in the Aviv state. So hence, Aviv is what it is often referred to, which is in the spring. So that is actually Rosh Hashanah. You know, that the Jewish holiday that takes place the first day of the 7th month. Rosh Hashanah is literally in Exodus 12. And an interesting point in Genesis 18, verse 14, as the angel is telling Abraham and Sarah that they will have a child, it says, "At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah will have a son." So the time of life is a euphemism for the spring. And again, his appointed time, that's the appointed time. All the time that they were waiting for to have this child, this was the appointed time, and it would happen in the spring, the time of life. So how beautiful is that? So again, the appointed times are his times, and we've been invited to partake of them and participate in them. It's time out of time. We see them in a calendar, but it is greater than that. It is greater than that because we get the chance to step outside of the framework of the worldly governmental system. We step outside of that, and we experience the Eternal. We enter into his realm for these glimpses, these pictures. Without change, all of this is for nothing, though. We need to change in order to adapt to his perspective, to his view. To be invited to his party, we need to show our credentials at the door, so to speak. We need to be invited based upon our compatibility. And so the Eternal has welcomed us to come and to be in his presence, and change must take place. We cannot remain unchanged. And, I've been told over the years that some people celebrate one of the Moedim and they just say, okay, let's mark that off the list and go to the next. And really cheapening grace, cheapening the holy perspective of the Eternal, that he's invited us to these very special days. And if you don't understand the Moedim, the appointed times, we can definitely set time aside for you to really know about them and be amazed. The world has a bizarre way of getting its information. We have a unique way of getting our information. I saw this video, really super creepy, so I want to creep you out before I get into the blessings and the good things, okay? Super creepy. You've heard of Siri from Apple and Alexa from Google?
Yes.
There was 3 different groups of people requesting information, and they came up with the same answer. They had a list of Allah, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, Moses, and they would answer, who is Muhammad? And they said, well, according to Wikipedia, Muhammad was a great prophet, in other words, was an opinion, and he blah, 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 okay? Who is Moses? Well, according to Wikipedia, blah, 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 blah. According to Jesus, the response was, sorry, I can't help you with that yet. And then ask again, sorry, I don't understand. This is true.
Yeah.
This is, when somebody tells you something, oh, yeah, okay, possible. But I heard and I saw the thing.
Yeah.
I saw the little thing spinning, in fact, the Siri. I can't help you with that. I don't know that.
Yeah.
And one time they said, who is Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ is a fictional character.
Yes, yes.
You saw this?
Right, yes.
You saw this. So this is super creepy information. And they're saying according to Wikipedia, and yet when they asked who St. Peter was, and St. Peter, also known as Simon Peter, was a disciple of Jesus Christ. Blah, blah, blah. So according to Wikipedia, they have that information.
Yeah.
But these vessels, which are demonic, they're listening to you. They will validate paranoia because they're gaining information, and it's just, as I said, super creepy. But the Eternal is communicating with us in his perfection. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And again, that 7 comes into. They even know about Ted Bundy. They had information about Ted Bundy. I mean, come on. Who's Jesus? Come on. It's absolutely insane. It's such an obvious. You know what? We can actually laugh at that because it's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
Yes.
It's like the screw tape letters, that old C.S. Lewis book about the devil and what he's doing. It's just so obvious. Come on now. But again, with the 7s, we have Beersheba in the scriptures, or Beersheba, but it's actually Beersheba, which means the well of oaths or the well of 7s. So the Shava is the oath, is the 7s, and the Shabbat. If you look at the Paleo Hebrew of this and what it means, the Shin and the Bet, or the Vet, is returning, and the Tav is a sign of the covenant. So Shabbat is a signal for us to return to the covenant. And that's what we endeavor to do. When we come together on the Sabbath day, it is to return to the covenant, understand what the covenant is, and understand what it means to be in the covenant. What's required of you? Oh yeah, we love the blessings. I mean, that's the church replacement theology over the years. Oh yeah, the Jews get blamed, they get hell forever in eternity. But as Christians, we get heaven. We get all the good stuff. Not too well sought out, unfortunately. So that brings us to the main subject I'm going to talk about, which is Shana, which is year. And of course, that's not to be confused with 50s doo-wop. Shana, Shana, not that. Shana is year. But if you look at the definition of what it means, it's linked to the numerical value of 2. It's the second. It refers to the duplication, the repeating. In the course of nature, the year is a repeating of that which has already been. The seasons unroll, and they unroll. They're faithful in their diversity, and they come and they roll and they roll and they roll. So it's a cycle of birth and death, the blossoms and the withering, the rebirth and the dying of nature. Same year after year. The nature of nature is to repeat. The season is a repetition, is a constant going. And this is a call for us to be paying attention. We tend to live by nature as creatures of habit. The more you live by the natural, the more you do what has already been done before. So again, this is a call for us to be vigilant and say, no, that doesn't define me. I work against, I'm like that salmon that's going upstream and is going to be successful, regardless of the others who are taking it easy downstream. Hey, look, the river's flowing this way, let's just coast. We can't coast. Okay? We tend to gravitate towards what is familiar, so we have the same habits, the same routines, the same courses, and the same sin can continue to revisit itself in our lives, which is why we are here. Because this is where we return to the covenant. We return to what we need to be hearing. We return, and I thank the Lord for these two gentlemen who were in this position of leadership. They're wonderful people. And that visit really said so much to my heart and my spirit. That we don't live by our words, but by our actions. And that's what agape is. It's not just me telling my wife how much I love her, and yet once we go back in the car, I start screaming at her, okay, you walk home, I'm going to drive. And the commandments of the Lord, how hard are they to keep? I mean, it's like, sorry, Regina, but this past week, I had a few indiscretions, a couple of adulterous. I couldn't help myself, because we're all human, right? And you'll notice that Herbie's not with us today. He just went on about the Jets, and it's just too much. So he's gone, okay? So you won't be seeing him next week either. Or, oh Lord, excuse me for that. I built that shrine this week, and it's right in the living room, right next to my TV. In fact, my TV is part of it, and I'm sorry about that. But that commandment, it's like, really, are the commandments, the top 10 big commandments, are they that difficult to obey?
No.
If you truly love the Lord, is it really beyond you to do these things? So to live by the natural is to live by repetition and rote, unchanged, unfazed, unmoved, going through the motions. But not so us. Not so us. We have to fly in the face of that kind of logic. And as a Church of God, you realize that one of the core positions is that the eternal is developing his character in you, is recreating himself in you.
Yes, sir.
And that's pretty heavy responsibility to consider, isn't it? I mean, if we're allowing him to work in our lives by his Spirit, then a lot's going on that we can't just shrug away and say, well, it's part of the weakness of being who I am. We do have a choice in this matter of Shana, of the repetition, because Shana also means the change. It means the changing. It means the new thing. It's the different thing. How can the same word mean two such opposite concepts? The same and the new, repetition and change. It's the same way that we approach a new year. And even though we're not approaching a new year until Aviv, we'll notice that the calendar page is going to be different. We'll notice that it's 2019. I stopped at 2015, just so you know. But next week will be, I'm just kidding. It's going to be 2019 next week, next Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So what? So what? But this opportunity to change happens every year, and we hear all these people making boasts about what they plan on doing and the resolutions and such. Every day is a time for us to make resolutions to the Lord and to stand before Him and says, Lord, I'm so sorry for failing in this matter, and I just need greater strength to succeed next time. Not as an excuse. We approach a generous Elohim, who is the Creator, but there's just so much. There's just so much. We have to be focused and do right. So we have to approach this idea either according to the natural, unchanged, unaffected, and in mindless pursuits. Are we still pursuing mindless things? Are we still just considering them little part-time stuff? Or how much vigor are we approaching these things? Or, according to the way of Elohim, are we renewed, refreshed, challenging? Life is now challenging and rewarding, and it respects the change. It's the change, and it reflects the change. You can't know Elohim and not be changed. This is absolute truth. Mm-hmm. We cannot just go about our business, and just by the fact that we're sitting in a specific building, in a specific chair, a specific day of the week, means nothing. If the change hasn't taken place, don't pat yourself on the back.
Yes, sir.
We haven't even begun. So the change must take place before this ever affects you. It's speaking the languages of Babel otherwise. And the great thing is, the more you know him, the greater the change in you. I will make all things new. He doesn't say, I will make all new things. I will make all things new. You will be renewed. You will return to the covenant. You will hear my words. They will have an effect on you. You will obey them. You will walk in his truth that I'm preparing for you. So again, we need to understand what that means. And we need to walk in his truth. Halakha is the way to walk. And just we mentioned earlier in one of the verses I think that were read about the tent of meeting, the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting in the scriptures before the tabernacle. It was Ohel Moed. It was the place of the appointment. The place of the appointment, the assigned purpose to this location was to communicate with the Most High. Leviticus 23:2 says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the feasts, the Moedim of the Eternal, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, Mikra Kodesh, holy assemblies, gatherings of holy like-minded people. These are my Moedim. 6 days you shall work, but the seventh day is the Shabbat of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Shabbat of the Eternal in all your dwellings. You shall proclaim them at their appointed time. So here we are. We are in the throes of a Shabbat. I'm warming you guys up for George. He's going to deliver the goods in a little while. So just be thankful. Just be thankful you have the opportunity. And if you're kind of hitting a raw nerve here, then that's good. It's good. We need to turn away from things that will so easily ensnare us and enslave us, to repeat these cycles that, wait a minute, I haven't done this in years. Why am I thinking like this? We cannot afford to shrink back. It says in Hebrews, we're not those who shrink back and are destroyed, but we press on. We need to move forward. We need to always be behavior-minded. How is our behavior changed by coming here and sitting here for 2.5 hours and then kibitzing later? Are we more interested in that bucket of Colonel Sanders back there than what meat's being presented to you to this day? You know, what is our motivation? Truly, if it's not to be with the Eternal in mind, to focus and make that connection. Because the Eternal, be holy, for I am holy. We are to be set apart, separate-minded, separate behaving people. So behavior is a key element to these assemblies.
Yes, sir.
And recognizing that, yes, he has made a change in me. That's our testimony. I used to think and do, now I don't. I don't repeat the cycle of the seasons anymore. I don't just follow the natural. If we do, then we're in serious trouble. But you know what? There's a starting point wherever we make that acknowledgement. We can make the progress that we need to make. Okay? It's not enough to just be here passively. You must involve yourself and be impacted by the event. You know, we have a ticket that has our seat and our row. Where am I? We need somebody to escort us to our seats. This is not a concert or a sporting event. Shabbat is not a spectator sport to be entertained, but we must be engaged. We must be challenged, involved, actively participate. Once a week, we have been mandated by contract, by covenant, by fiat, by absolute. You know, it's not a case where the Eternal, oh, he's so loving. He'll understand why. He makes allowances. You know, I don't want to be in that position. Oh, wow, but I thought you were so loving. You know, I had a lot of good excuses. There was really good cartoons on this past Saturday. And, SpongeBob, it was running a marathon of SpongeBob. And you couldn't expect me to walk away from that. You know my heart. Yes, I never knew you. You know, SpongeBob, I'm not going to put him in the blame. I'll not blame him for our infidelities, because that's part of the adulteress. What did the Eternal call Israel when they went and did their own thing? He said, use some very harsh language. Very harsh language. So we have been contracted to be here to do this, to hear these words, like it or not. This is why we are here, not because, you know what? I have an excuse to stay home every Shabbat and just go, we don't have an excuse. We don't have it. While we have breath within us, yes, we seek the place where the Eternal will be, where his words are. Where his words are, he will be.
Yes, sir.
If his words are being faithfully spoken, he will be there.
Amen.
But faithfully spoken is different from what the adversary did at the wilderness of temptation. He knew the words. He knew a lot of obscure verses to throw at Yeshua. He knew a lot of obscure verses, but Messiah knocked them all down, every one of them. As it is written, as it is written. That is our testimony. So if we have truly been changed, we anticipate this day with joy, not dread or indifference. Mm-hmm. And that means when the Sabbath rolls around, I forgot to get gas. I forgot to get food for the night. Well, it says remember the Sabbath day. Remember it on Tuesday. Remember the Sabbath day is 4 days away, and we need to get our stuff in order and get it together, right? Oh, but it's I had no choice, Lord. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Isaiah 56:13 says, if you turn away your foot from Shabbat, from doing your own pleasure on my holy day, and in fact you call the Shabbat a delight. The holy day of the eternal, which is a parallelism. The Shabbat is a delight. It's a holy day of the eternal. We call that honorable. And shall honor him by honoring it. Okay? And shall honor him, not doing your own ways, not finding your own pleasure, not speaking your own words. Then we see a behavioral shift being visualized here, okay? Then you shall delight yourself in the eternal. Just as we call the Shabbat a delight, the giver of the Shabbat is the supreme delight. And that's who we come to know the Shabbat truly through him. You call the Shabbat. And I will cause you to ride on the high hills of the earth and feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father. Whether we are native born or part of the commonwealth, we all have the responsibility, the same calling. The one Torah is given. Yeah. And then he ends by saying, the mouth of the eternal is spoken. In other words, the matter is settled. No haggling, no haggling. No lines forming up to the right or to the left where we can discuss things further. That's it. That's it. And you know what? That's enough. That's enough. The fact that we have a so wonderful and loving a Savior that he pulls us out of the miry clay to set us upon a rock, to establish our goings. Where are we in a position to say, you know what? It's all good and well, but we've not been given that. We've not been afforded that opportunity. Don't speak your words, speak his. Devarim, the 2 tablets that we see that are given on the Shabbat in Exodus 31. And I'm almost finished. How am I doing for time? Am I there? Okay, I'm just about finished here. So we are to be a new creation, according to 2 Corinthians 5:17. We enter a new covenant by a new and living way, or if you will, a renewed covenant. It is new to us. And the Brit Chadashah, the new covenant, Chadash, is a freshness. It is there's nothing stale about it. It is met with great expectation because it's almost like you've never seen it before. You wake up in the morning, you open up your word, it's fresh to you. It's not, I'm going to read Psalm 23 again. No, it's fresh. Mm-hmm. It's fresh because it's a living word. Yeah. And it means so much to us. Amen. It's a word of newness and change. You know? So his will for us, when the year rolls around, and as the secular calendar changes, we can still apply this every day of our lives. But as we see people falling by the wayside, all these gymnasium memberships have blossomed in January. You know what? You go there in like mid-February, they're back to being empty again. They're empty again. But this place needs to be full week after week. Yes. It needs to be a place of learning, a place of truth. His will for you is that the year is not a year of fruitless repetition, but one of newness and change. New beginnings, new steps, breaking out of old patterns and ways that have failed, breaking out of that routine and that rut. So we need to choose not to live in that repetition of the same old, where we need to be engaged and involved. We need to walk in newness of life. I saw this little thing on the news. They were talking with this gentleman, and it happened so fast I didn't have a chance to write down the name or the book or record it or anything. But he was talking about drug addiction and the serious opioid crisis and the people who have stopped drugs and they just wind up going back on the drugs. and overdosing and such. And he came up with such words of clarity in the situation. You know, the war on drugs and how punitive do we need to make the prison service. In fact, the word penitentiary comes from the idea is you allow them to hear the word of Elohim and they are repentant. It's a penitentiary. They are penitent people who emerge from that with a renewed purpose. We are free. We paid our debt to society, and it was well met, and we are free to go. But his explanation was interesting, that we need to be loved and we need to be engaged and involved, not passive, not, gee, I know what you're going through, and kind of hands off. We need to be involved in their life. And if you know somebody in this predicament, it's kind of on us to intervene and to step in and to engage people. Let them know that they're loved, get them involved in something. You know, get them involved in helping others is a great way to get better yourself. And he referred to this laboratory experiment, which was really interesting. There was this rat in a cage, okay? And, you know, the four walls of this cage, and he had 2 bottles of water. One of them was laced with an opioid. Did you hear about this? Okay? And so the rat has a choice of both. Eventually, it drinks the water with the opioid and winds up killing itself by just overdosing on the opioid in that water that's been there. So he had a choice of going back, but because its limited potential, its limited outlook was so dour, so bleak, it just said later. And yet, there was another situation where a rat is placed in a cage with these same 2 bottles, only this time the rat is given little exercise wheels, little access to other rats and interacting with them, and little mazes and different things to entertain. And again, both of those bottles were there. The one was clear water, the one was laced with the drugs. The one laced with the drugs was hardly touched. This rat wanted to be engaged and involved in the activities that it was capable of experiencing. So this says a lot about us, you know, not that we're rats, but we are involved in a rat race to a certain degree, and we're running around, and we look, and the only thing we can see are the 4 walls around us and how bleak everything seems to be, and, you know, just succumb to the frustrations and succumb to depression or whatever it is, but engaged, involved, you know, not entertained, but engaged. You need to give of yourself,
Yes.
to participate,
Yes.
not to be entertained, not to be passive.
Amen.
There's no area in our life where we need to be passive. We need to be actively involved. Even as we hear from the eternal, we are actively anticipating. We're not passively lying back and like an unconscious zombie or something. We are actively involved. We meet him on the mountain of communication, the mountain of revelation. So we need to, you know, the old saying, carpe diem, you know, attack each day. Each day, our life is given a chance to breathe and to progress and to do positive and to replicate the behavioral patterns of our eternal Father. So again, Shabbat, we stop from foolishness. We talk about a sporting event, we talk about this, we talk about work, left work. No, we forget about that stuff. We stop what we're doing. We stop anything that's contrary to the eternal. We focus on what his potential is for us, because he's got great hope in us. He's got great potential.
Yes, sir.
He's the perfect trainer. He's the perfect advocate, because he knows how high we can jump. He's not going to compare me to Mark Ellis or to my wife Regina or to Felix. He's not going to compare us. He's going to, well, Felix can do it. Come on now. You know, if we have different capabilities, you know, he knows our limits. He knows who we are. He knows us better than we can ever know ourselves. And yet he wants to engage us. He wants us involved. When you feel that this is becoming too alienating, too passive, you know, talk to these gentlemen, talk to us. Let's get the motor running, you know. You know, put some STP in your gas tank and get it running to its full potential. Because we have the tendency, a rainy day can all of a sudden just kind of, you know, lousy day. Oh no. Oh, it's so nasty out there. It's 20 degrees and it's snow and ice is out there. And, you know, things have an effect on us. But we need to minimize that by knowing how much the Eternal loves us. And again, he's the core of the Torah. Remember, the Torah focuses on the core, who is the Eternal. Bereshit, the beginning, reminds us that he is the center of all that is. And chapter 1, verse 1 of Genesis is a supreme example of science at its best presented, where we have space, time, matter, and energy explained to us. And it's from Elohim, it's from him. Yes, we can't create matter or energy, but somebody better than me can.
Yes.
And he can do all things. And the word also says that we can do all things through Messiah, who strengthens us. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to stop here.
Amen.
We are to be known by our agape, our love. He is agape. And let us be involved, okay? Thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to come up and share with you. I just want to say a quick prayer if I could. Abba, I just thank you for this day, Father, for the opportunity to share your word, to sometimes to light a fire under us, Abba. I know I do from time to time. And I just pray, Father, that you keep us engaged, keep us in the game, keep our heads in the game. We see sporting events which are high risk, and if somebody's not paying attention, man, they can get just blasted. And how dangerous it is for us in this day and age to be distracted, to not be involved, not to be actively engaged in those circumstances and scenarios that we find ourselves. Help us, Abba, to do better each day, to do better, to do better. We're called to be perfect, even as you are perfect, Father. But today we will be better than we were yesterday, and tomorrow we will be better. We will do and we will try, and we will succeed because you watch over us. You've invested too much in us, Father, for us to just let it slide. So we thank you for your loving compassion, Abba, that you give us Torah, you give us your instructions, you give us the manual of life, Abba. You give us the words that caress our very existence and support us and engage us, Father. We give you thanks for all things. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.